very, very painful time in my life. The freakiest thing happened to me. What I felt was horrible, was violent.
The experience happened just a few days after I came out of a coma. I'm over my face, and I'm so close to my own face that I can actually feel my breath.
I like things I can touch, that I can see, and that are believable for me in that way. I was really uncomfortable in my own house. My dog was really afraid.
I've always been ultra sensitive to outside energies. Still to this day, I'm fairly shocked by what I'm about to share with you.
This was actually not a great time in my life in terms of what was happening internally for me. I was drinking a lot, and it's funny because in this 3-month period, this is the time that I got sober. I had been married 4 years. I married a wonderful musician, songwriter, and he was making his first solo album, and he decided to work up with a producer named Sylvia, who is a really great producer and has a studio up in Weed, California. Sylvia bought this old movie theater, the one and only movie theater in Weed, and converted it into a recording studio. We live in Los Angeles, and my husband was gonna leave for like 3 months. So I was a little freaked out that he was gonna be gone for so long. And there was an attached apartment next door to this theater. And he said, I can tell you right now, you're not gonna like it. But I didn't care, because I was like, I just wanna be with my husband. There was like one block that was actually the town of Weed. It wasn't like a Western, like ghost town, but it was very deserted. He showed me the theater and the studio, and it was very dark. It was very dark. There weren't a lot of lights. It smelled old. And he was trying to tell me, this place is really cool. You know, the Chili Peppers have stayed here, and Tom Petty's recorded here, and there's history here, and great records have been made here. And I thought, okay, you know what? Just stick it out. You can do this. Just have an open mind. I thought, have an open mind. We go up to this apartment. It was just old, dusty. There was a kitchen, and I love to cook, so I'm like, all right, I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna make dinner, I'm gonna make this a pleasant experience. So we go to sleep one night. We were in separate beds because they were twin beds, so I couldn't sleep with Rob. We went to sleep that night, and I wasn't scared of anything or spooked about anything. Probably the freakiest thing happened to me. And my armpits are starting to sweat right now as I'm telling this. The covers were yanked from my legs. And what I felt was this horrible, like needles poking into my legs like a current of electricity. It was like an electric shock. And it was violent, like, whoa. Something was trying to get my clothes off.
Rob, get up.
He didn't even think anything of it. I was completely terrified, frightened, and it took me a long time to go back to sleep. The only way that I could make myself feel better was to cook a massive, beautiful Indian dinner. I wanted to cook for everyone, and it's the way that I would relax. And we had Sylvia and her husband over, and it was so good. And while I was doing the dishes, cleaning up, she lays it on us. She says, "So, have you seen the ghost?" And I dropped the plate, and I had this instant, horrible feeling all over, and I'm like, oh my God. And I said, what are you talking about? She was like, we've had some sightings, there have been artists that have come, different artists have seen this ghost. There have been sightings of a man. I said, this is really messed up. And I told her whatever it was, I described everything to her, and her reaction was, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry he bothered you. I'm like, he who? And she starts to tell us. There was a barber that lived in the basement of the building years and years and years ago. It was like 1919, something like that. He was a violent alcoholic. This guy was just a mean drunk, a bad drunk. And she was telling us stories that this was passed down, that he was so drunk when he would cut people's hair that he would cut their ears with a razor blade. But this is the part that made me really upset. He committed suicide in the basement of that building. We go up to this apartment. Probably the freakiest thing happened to me. And what I felt was this horrible, like needles poking into my legs, and it was violent. There was a barber that lived in the basement of the building. He committed suicide. What happened to me personally was I actually thought, what if this is a message, from him, that I gotta stop drinking? And I was like, Jesus, is there a connection here? Like, what if he's trying to tell me something? It's a very, very painful time in my life. A very low, dark, sad, lonely period. Over the next 2 weeks, I actually joined a 12-step program. And I stopped drinking and haven't had a drink since then. It's been 5 years. And I remember I told Rob, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna come back, and I've got a clean slate in my life. I wanna feel better about myself. This is it, I'm gonna face this fear, I'm gonna go up there, I'm gonna stay with Rob, because that's what I have to do. I have to be with my husband right now. I don't care anymore, I'm just gonna go, and I'm gonna walk in that place, and I'm gonna tell that ghost to leave me alone. And I walked in, and I just said, if you're here, go away. Don't bother me. I'm in your space, but I'm not gonna bother you, so leave me alone. Don't touch me, don't hurt me, don't come near me, just go away and leave me alone. Let me be peaceful. And that was it. just like, I felt like it was cleansed. I felt more clean. The best part about this story is that I remember saying to Rob, I want to have a baby, I want to have a baby. I want to be a mom. And we went in that room where this ghost pulled the covers off my legs. And we made love, and we got pregnant. Maybe I was meant to be scared out of my mind, you know, and have something like that happen. Whether this barber was like some drunk pervert, whether he was an alcoholic who was trying to give me the message, you know, to stop, I don't know. I think all of it happened for a reason, and that was that I cleaned my life up. I needed that to happen, you know. I needed to go back and face that fear, and I did. You know, I took it head on. So it actually turned out to be a miracle.
I've always believed in the paranormal. I mean, there is a paranormal, and there are spirits, and there are ghosts, and anybody who doesn't, you know, believe there aren't is being silly, because what runs this vessel is energy, and you can't kill energy. You can only displace it. It has to go somewhere. So there are spirits, as we call them. Of course there are. I don't remember much of my life, you know, before this experience, because the experience happened just a few days after I came out of a coma. So I don't know what kind of guy I was. I was told I was an a-hole, but I don't know firsthand. In June of 1981, I was making a movie, and I had a break. So I was off for about 2 weeks. I was visiting my girlfriend, and I left her house, had to go home to leave town, and like a day and a half or two later. And as I go out to my car, which was a Jeep, her dog jumps in the car with me because I had off the doors. And we pull out our driveway, and we're heading down the road, and we're doing about, 35 or 40, and the dog is leaning way out the open door. So I take my hands off the wheel, and I say, sit down, Sandy, and look up. And my last conscious memory for 2 weeks is, I'm gonna wreck my car. And I hit a tree. I'm not out of the coma yet, and it's a memory I have in the time I was in the coma. And I'm over my face, and I'm so close to my own face that I can actually feel my breath. And I'm that close, and then I start rising. And I rise so high that the bed is about the size of my thumbnail. And I have a choice. I can go up, or I can come back to my body. And I chose to come back to my body. You know, I was only 25, and I just wasn't done. I come out of the coma for about 4 days, and I have my arm in a weird kind of a sling with all these intravenous stuff in it, and I have this weird leg thing going on, and I cannot feel the whole right side of my body. I hit the left side of my head so hard, the whole right side of my body was just gone pretty much. And I have this doctor. He told me that my heart had stopped twice, and that it sounded like what I had was what's referred to as a rising. 2 days later, after that happened, I'm lying in my hospital bed, and the TV's on without sound, and I'm just feeling like the biggest loser I've ever known. I was such a mess. I couldn't remember anything but my name. And I think I'll always be a cripple. I can't remember anything, oh my God. And then I see this little couple walk in the room, and they're very tiny, and her hair's mostly white. He had like stringy strands of hair, and they both looked as if they'd just gotten off a train having traveled 1,000 miles. You know, very happy to be there, but a little tired and a little worn, a little rumpled. And I remember thinking that they reminded me of my grandparents. They didn't have nice things, so they had to be clean. And I was moved by that, because I like recognized that right away. And they walk into my room, and they know me. I asked them, you know, where they came from. I said, where'd you come from?
We came from Romania.
Romania. I said, like you came from Romania to here? And they said, yeah, from Romania to this hospital. Yeah. Okay. I just accepted it. And they're telling me all about, they're here to help me, that I have to start taking phosphatidylcholine for my memory, because I suffered brain trauma. I'm gonna have severe memory loss. And then after about a month of that, I have to go to the hard stuff, which is Astrovital or Gerobitol. And they explained to me that Astrovital is a youth serum, supposedly, and a memory enhancer, supposedly. They explained to me that it was illegal, but can be gotten under the counter in most drugstores. I didn't really think about it, but I asked them to write it down for me, and they do. And they leave. I get out of the hospital. I was in there for a month. It took me about a week or 10 days after I got out of the hospital that I decided to go to the pharmacy and to ask about these products. I go to my drugstore and I ask for Astrovital and or Gerobitol, and they go, shh, that stuff's illegal. It's in every major drugstore under the counter. You don't have to travel far to find it. Everybody's got it. They're just not gonna admit it. It was my pharmacy, so I knew the pharmacist, I knew the staff, and everybody there, and he sells me some. It costs $100 a box, 5 vials in a box. I wouldn't call it a medication, just because it hasn't been approved by the FDA. So I start taking Astrovital, and about the better part of a week passed, and suddenly stuff starts coming back. My heart had stopped twice. I couldn't remember anything but my name. And then I see this little couple walk in the room, and they're telling me all about, they're here to help me, that I have to start taking phosphatidylcholine for my memory, because I suffered brain trauma. I'm gonna have severe memory loss. And then after about a month of that, I have to go to the hard stuff, which is Astrovital or Gerobitol. They explained to me that it was illegal, but can be gotten under the counter in most drugstores. So I start taking Elisabeth, I start with injectables. And about the better part of a week passed, and suddenly stuff starts coming back. My high school graduation, I remembered it. And my manager, I remember when I met him suddenly. Oh, right. I remember my family suddenly. I remember where I was from suddenly. I didn't know those things. I was just told those things by other people. I didn't know them as experiences up until the acid vital kicked in. It was severe brain trauma, and I was severely, severely hurt. And I thought I was ruined as an actor because it's all about you talking and remembering. And I couldn't do either very well after the accident. So I was very, very depressed for a long time. But thanks to this Romanian couple, I got my memory back. I decided to go to the hospital. I also asked the nurse, I said, you know that couple who is here? Who is this couple again, she asked. I said, I don't know their names, but you didn't see them? I haven't seen anybody visit you except so-and-so and so-and-so. I'm like, no, it's not them. Anyway, nobody saw this couple. I checked. Nobody saw them. I look back on them. Everything about the memory, there's different texture to them in my memory, just to them as tangible beings. There's a whole different texture, and their color was much more vibrant. Everything, even his light, dull blue sports coat was beautiful, oddly enough, in its old worn-out way, you know. And she was wearing a lot of yellow, and it was also very faded, as it had been washed a million times. They came and went too quickly, too smoothly, and too poignantly, and they weren't seen. I asked around, and everybody's like. As time has passed, I look back on that couple, and I think, I definitely believe they were spirits. I definitely believe, for whatever reasons, they had a real affection for them because they were sweet. As time has passed, I have a real love for them and a real thanks, and I don't believe they were people. I believe they were something else.
Where I grew up, my mom was totally open and a hippie and a real believer in mysticism. So let's just say that. I think I was an open person to a mystical experience, but I'm definitely the kind of person that believes in what I see. I like things I can touch, that I can see, and that are believable for me in that way. I got a house in Southampton, New York, and Long Island when I was on Law & Order that I totally fell in love with. It was everything that I love about a house. And a house has a character. It has a quality to it, like a person. When I bought this house, I was really at a total high in my life, just overall. I think that Law & Order was so much fun for me. I was in a great relationship, you know. I was just full of life. I didn't feel like that house kind of had a youthful, energetic quality. And I had that, and that's what I was bringing to the house, and I just felt like that house and I belonged together. I had had a lot of happiness in that house, a lot of parties, a lot of laughter, a lot of holidays. That looseness of summer is something that continued at that house all throughout the seasons. I left Law & Order, which was a long run for me, and I had done a brave thing, which was to leave the show and go to LA and pursue other endeavors. I had been gone from the house for a long time, you know, longer than I'd ever gone. Probably, you know, six or 7 months went by. This particular weekend, I had brought my dog from LA. I had adopted a dog at a shelter. I mean, I just felt like totally whole. I mean, I'm just emotional about coming home. It's been a long time. It was late at night, you know, we drove a long way. And we're tired, and we get out of the car, and there aren't a lot of street lights and city lights, and I mean, the stars are like a blanket above your head. And when we got to the house that weekend, I did feel like there was a negative feeling when you know, that weekend. I, you know, really felt a shift in this house. You know what I'm saying? Like, there just wasn't, it felt like life needed to be breathed back into the house or something. But my dog, you know, just was just really uncomfortable at this house. He was actually really afraid. The house is split into two sides, two halves, and on one side there's the master bedroom. So that side was okay, and the dog, Homer, was fine going to that side of the house. Homer was fine being anywhere in this house, but the other side of the house that has 2 bedrooms, he wouldn't go into that hallway and follow me to that side of the house. And that side of the house I would go into a lot because the second bedroom has the computer. We always called it the kids' room because if we had a friend come by with a child and stay for the weekend, you know, they might forget a toy, or, you know, we'd be out and about shopping and, you know, like I'd see a stuffed animal and I'd buy it. And I was constantly going into this other bedroom and he just wouldn't follow me. You know, follow me upstairs and then not follow me down the hallway. And I was there alone that weekend and I thought, something's not right here. This dog would have followed me through a fire. If the house was on fire, this dog would have run in to save my life. I would just, you know, called him every time I would go in and check my email. I'd say, Homer, come here, you know. And he would never cross the threshold of this hallway. The more I call to him, you know, he's sort of backing up and not wanting to come in, and I think, oh God, why is he doing this? You know, it does begin to make me feel a little bit nervous. So I'm talking on the phone with a friend and I'm telling them what's happening. They're like, oh my God, there's definitely a ghost in the house, Liz. Oh my God, you know? I mean, dogs know things. You know, that dog is not coming after you because that dog senses something. I got a house in Southampton, New York, and Long Island when I was on Law & Order that I totally fell in love with. I had been gone from the house for 6 or 7 months. And when we got to the house that weekend, my dog was just really uncomfortable at this house. That dog senses something. One night, I decide that I'm going to push the envelope and I'm gonna make him come into this hallway. I wanted to like confront it because I was really uncomfortable in my own house, which was so strange. And I start to, you know, kind of like, you know, get down and bring him to me and bring him up to the door frame. I want to know if I push it, if something's gonna happen. And he starts to growl really aggressively and starts to really like squat, you know, backing up really dramatically. I think to myself, something's here, I've got to do something, I've got to say something. I got up to the door and I I just said, if there is a spirit here, make yourself known. One of the dolls talked.
Thanks for the hug.
It was just the most eerie thing to hear a creepy sentence like, thanks for the hug. How do you make that up? You know, who comes up with thanks for the hug? It's not something that can come out of your imagination. I'm a little bit, you know, smiling about it because it makes me uncomfortable, basically. I was curious, you know, who had lived there and had anybody, you know, died there, and, you know, what were the stories of this house? People are born, they get married, you know, all of the things that happen in a family. I had heard that this old doctor had lived there his whole life, but he never had a family. When he passed away, he was still alone. And I thought, in a way, how lonely. There was this unrested presence. You know, maybe this person, you know, really didn't leave this house. And it was just angry at me for leaving so long. I had had a lot of happiness in that house. And then suddenly I left, you know, for half of a year, and I think on some level there was maybe discontent about that. You know, isn't that what that sentence was? This presence was saying, you know, thanks for giving me that affection and that warmth, and so thanks for the hug. I got the message loud and clear. I didn't go running to a hotel that night, and I didn't immediately want to give the house away. And I have continued to go back there, and it's never happened again. So whatever that spirit or presence or ghost needed to do, it got resolved.
Thanks for the hug.
I've always been ultra sensitive to outside energies. And it's funny because some people have different gifts. Some people can see them. Some people can feel them. Some people can communicate with them. I tend to feel things a lot stronger than actually seeing things. In 1993, I had the pleasure of working with Tia Carrere on a project called Treacherous, and we were down in Mexico. And actually, it was Baja California, near Rosarita Beach. We were down there shooting a little action picture, and for about 3 nights, we were filming in this hacienda slash hotel resort that was built in the 20s, the early 20s. It was a gorgeous place with a view of the ocean. It'd been run down. It was just a stunning place at one time that had just been completely let go. And the rumor around the place was that it was frequented by Al Capone and his boys. They would go down there and lay low. When we first got there, there were different stations set up, you know, the makeup area and the props people and all the different departments. Some of the people were stationed upstairs. I recall specifically the makeup and hair people were on the 3rd floor. People are feeling things. The makeup lady in particularly said that she kept feeling something, like somebody was watching her, and it was scaring the hell out of her. The entire makeup and hair team had packed up and moved downstairs. And I'm talking, you know, fragile women up to some really buff guys, all sort of coming back with the same thing. And they said, I refuse to set up at the top up there. It was scaring the hell out of them. That's what really got my attention. Well, finally, after, the first night of hearing this, I went back the second night and I had a couple scenes off. There was so much chatter about the fact that there was, energies and a ghost around that, I was a bit skeptical and bored. And I went hunting around with a flashlight. There was some light coming in through the windows, but for the most part, it was fairly dark. As I was walking down a hallway, I went into what would be considered presidential suite, one of the bigger rooms. It was ornate. There was a chandelier covered in spider webs. It was like out of the movies. And I'll never forget when I entered this beautiful room, the coldness that instantly rushed over me. I lifted my light over. There was so much chatter about the fact that there was, energies and a ghost around that, I was a bit skeptical and bored. And I went hunting around with a flashlight. I lifted my light over. And standing in the far side was this gorgeous woman. Stunning, frightful, young, dark-haired girl who was so scared. I haven't encountered something like this before. Again, I've felt things, I've heard things, I've thought I've seen things, but this was an image that was crystal clear. Just this picture of innocence. Just fraught with fear. And that really confused me. So as I stood there looking at her, I could feel her fear disappearing a little bit. And in that moment of recognition, the two of us started to communicate. Not with words. I wasn't speaking to her, and she wasn't speaking to me, but we had this telepathic exchange going on. She just fed me this information. What would, normally take an hour of verbiage to understand her story and what was going on in that moment was exchanged in a few moments. And it was clear to me that I was in the presence of a not only a ghost, but a stunning young girl that I felt immediately connected to, and I had this need to comfort her and nurture her. I knew I understood her whole story. She had come down to Mexico to stay for a couple of weeks, and she was with one of Capone's guys. They'd been there for 2 full weeks, and that was the room that she was staying in with this gentleman. And after a wonderful trip, and it was a great experience for her, but on the way home, there's some treacherous roads out there, winding roads. Boom, they have this car accident and she's killed. She didn't know that. She came walking back to the hotel, wasn't recognized by anybody. That freaked her out. And she sort of locked into this room, this honeymoon suite. That was the place for her that she was unable to let go of. This makeup artist definitely felt something was going on. I said, do you see her? She said no, she didn't see it, but she was so scared. And still to this day, I'm fairly shocked by what I'm about to share with you. This energy moved behind the makeup artist and then almost disappeared. As that happened, the makeup artist just opened up like this and closed her eyes. And I immediately knew what to do. I held her, and the makeup artist and I embraced for what felt like an eternity. I can't quite explain the feeling that I get even talking about it, because it was an important moment. When we separated, I'll never forget this, the cold chill that we both felt immediately melted away during our embrace. And I saw the woman that I was hugging sort of come back to planet Earth, if you will, and the two of us shared this moment of shock, totally bewildered. And the makeup artist now is not afraid anymore. She's just completely dissolved any and all fears. There was no more spirit. The ghost had gone away. I mean, could you imagine, you die, nothing's changed for you. You go back to the place that you just left and nobody can recognize you. Nobody knows who you are. Nobody even, acknowledges your presence. And then you're stuck in this place for 70 years. God knows how long she was there with people, trying to get somebody's attention or just, in such a state of fear. It was just almost as if she needed to feel the human touch one more time before she went on her way.
Corner of my eye, I saw a car run the red light and at 35, 40 miles an hour hit me full bore. And I was going through the windshield. I almost felt like something pushing me back. I should have been dead.
I called my mom and she's like, Allie, it's not looking good. We don't think that he's gonna make it through the night. So she said, I'm gonna put the phone by his ear, so just go ahead, and talk to him, Allie.
At a certain point, I started getting a little freaked out, thinking, wow, I'm here alone. You could just feel that there were ghosts everywhere.
They would move my clothes, forks moving across the table, the plates, rattling. Their confrontational behavior towards me. That's how I knew when they were in the house and when they weren't.
I did the movie Ghostbusters, and I would get all these sort of weird requests to do different things. I got asked to come to Greer, Arizona, and to spend a night at this hotel that had a ghost named Zeke.
Paranormal was discussed a lot in my family because my mother had this natural psychic ability. She never charged for it, she never exploited it, but word of mouth brought quite a few people to the home. So, yeah, I was around it from my earliest memories. My dad and mom told me that while I was sleeping, once in a while, they would look in my room and they would see the image of my grandmother almost like protecting me by my bed. And she died, before I was born. They would see a soft, photograph kind of floating by my bed. I mean, you know, not ghost-like, more angelic light, and very calming, peaceful, kind of an inner light. And if you met my parents, they're not strange or off. I mean, my dad was a tech illustrator at Jet Propulsion Laboratory. My mother was a homemaker. Very normal people, but this was part of their life. I never met my grandmother, but from the stories my dad tells me, and she, you know, made it through the Depression with, you know, with her family. But unfortunately, she had breast cancer, and she died in her middle 40s. So even though I never met her, I had a good feeling what she was about. I believe it was 1971. I finally could afford my first new car, and it was a yellow VW, which back then, they weren't exactly the safest car, but they were the cheapest car. And I had picked up a stray German Shepherd off the street. There were no tags, nothing. So I decided to take the Shepherd down to the dog pound and place the dog on the passenger side. Instead of sitting on the seat, the dog kind of went underneath. There was like where the leg room is, kind of just laid down there. So I was going over Burbank Boulevard, and you go over the overpass, and you come to a three-way signal. I was waiting to make a left-hand turn, and cars are going by this way. There's other cars with the red kind of angle, with a red light angled. Well, at the corner of my eye, I was waiting to make a left-hand turn. I saw a car run the red light. The woman was looking behind at her kids or something, and at 35, 40 miles an hour, hit the side where the dog was on, full bore. Enough to rip the car almost in half a little bit. And I remember very distinctly, from the moment the impact happened, everything turned into extremely slow motion. Time didn't stop, but it almost stopped. Every frame I could remember, it was forever. As my head was going up into the rearview mirror, because I didn't have a seatbelt on at the time, my head hit the rearview mirror and heading toward the windshield. At that moment, I saw the face of my Grandma Ann, smiling, real as can be. And it was very angelic. Beautiful blue eyes, this very light skin, the most comforting, kindest look and smile. So kind. And the words she spoke, everything's fine. Everything's fine. And I knew everything was fine. I can remember everything that happened all the way through. And it was like stop photography. And I was going through the windshield. I almost felt like something pushing me back. It felt like an hour had passed. And then time happened again, immediately. This car was annihilated. This car was, I mean, from the passenger side, it was like peeled up. It was in half, almost like a can. It was just pulled apart. You know, the police came. They thought for sure someone had died. Well, not only did no one die, if the dog would have been on the chair, on the seat, he would have been crushed, but he was just under it. So it was like a bubble that protected the dog. I don't remember who was in the car. I don't remember any of that, but it was this woman. She was not hurt. Me, they thought, oh, I must be really hurt. I said, no, I know I'm not hurt. I know I'm not hurt. Is you have to be. They forced me to just don't move, not to move. I knew I was fine. I'm arguing with them. And they said, no, you're in shock. You're in shock. The police came, no, you're in shock. You're in shock. They brought an ambulance. They stretched. I said, I'm fine. All I had was a scratch. Literally a scratch. They took me to the hospital. They put me through a series of tests. Nothing. I should have been dead. And nothing. And it was so, my grandmother, it was so vivid, it was so real. I felt protected. And I knew I was okay. And that's an absolutely true story. Well, I didn't tell very many people, but I did tell my mother and father, and they felt that it was very valid. I mean, they understood and believed what I believed. We had to go down to the yard where they towed the car, and my dad took me down. My dad started crying when he saw the car. He had no idea. He couldn't believe how damaged. He couldn't believe I came through it. From my deepest part of me, I know she saved my life. There's definitely something beyond now. What it is, how it is, well, I'll embrace that when the time comes, but I know there's something more.
You have to understand, I am from the South, and that should say it all for people who know about the South. I grew up, since I was a small child, hearing, ghost stories. I heard stories of, my great-grandmother coming back and appearing to people, or just, stories from everyone. But little did I know that as I would get older, it would affect me so much. One of the very first experiences that I would say impacted me the most was with someone who I was very, very close to, my godfather. He and I don't know, we've always had a very, very special bond. He married my father's youngest sister, and we would always go on vacations together. They had 2 children that were near our age, and he just sort of looked out for me always. And what happened was I won Miss USA in 1996. And because of that, I had to move to California. It was a big change in my life. It was my first time ever being away from my family, and that was pretty tough for me. And while I was gone, my godfather, he was diagnosed with cancer, and it was terminal. And for me, that was really tough because no one really spoke about it, because I think it was probably too hard and, too emotional to even go there mentally. And he progressively, got worse while I was here. Every day just seemed like forever. And it was so sad for me to know that he was there and in so much pain, and, he was so sick. At the end of the illness, he was hospitalized, and they knew that he was not going to get out of the hospital. I called my mom, and she's like, "Allie, it's not looking good, and we don't think that he's going to make it through the night." So she said, I'm going to put the phone by his ear. Just go ahead. He can hear you. So just go ahead, and talk to him, Allie. And of course, you're nervous and there's all these emotions going on, and I just wanted him to know how much I loved him, and I wanted to be there with him and with everyone else. And they told me that he had a reaction, like he moved a little bit. Of course, that touched me that he smiled, because I knew that he heard me. But it was really tough because I knew everyone was around his bed, and I really wanted to be there with them. I got off the phone with my mom, and it was not long after that, maybe a few hours after that, probably 11:30 or so. I was still up, about to go to bed. I was so sad. I just couldn't get them off of my mind. And the phone rings, and I answer the phone, thinking, who's calling me this late? And it was his voice. I was thinking, this can't be. And then he said, hey, my baby.
Hey, my baby.
And that was something he always said to me. Every time we saw each other, spoke, he always said that. So he said, hey, my baby, I just wanted to tell you that I'm fine. I'm gonna be okay. I want you to tell Aunt Vicky and Nick and Brandy that, you know, I'm gonna be fine. And I couldn't even speak. I didn't know what to say. I was shocked, but then I was thinking, this is him? Is he okay? I mean, I had just spoke to my mother. She put the phone by his ear. He hasn't moved in days. I mean, he was really, really, really sick at this point. They didn't think he was gonna make it through the night. And then I get this phone call with this joy in his voice. I could hear the happiness. What I could hear, it's like I could visualize him smiling as he was speaking to me. I was so confused. And then before I could even attempt to say something, he hung up. And I'm just left, jaw hitting the floor, and just sort of in awe and trying to, you know, get my bearings and figure out what just happened. I mean, it was him. I knew it was him.
Hey, my baby.
Shortly after that, my mom calls and says, you know, Allie, I just wanted to tell you that he just passed away. I mean, I get emotional thinking about it. Like, but he called me. I received this phone call from my godfather after he had passed. Like, how could that be? And, you know, I thought, why me? Why did he call me? And then I thought to myself, he knew that everyone, I think, was suffering, just going through this illness with him, and it was tough on everyone. And, you know, I was maybe the one that was away from the situation, and maybe I needed to deliver this message.
Hey, my baby, I'm gonna.
And it's like I instantly knew what I had to do. I grabbed a piece of paper and I just wrote every single word he said on this paper.
I want you to tell Aunt Vicky and Nick and Brandy I'm gonna be okay.
He specifically had a message for his wife and his 2 children who he adored. So I was crying, and I can even remember the tears dripping down on the page as I was writing. And I knew that I had to deliver this message. I knew that was part of the reason why I received this phone call. So I wrote everything down. I called my mom. I translated it to her the next day. And they read this letter for his funeral. I can not only be with Vicky and Nick. He was the best dad in the world and an amazing husband. And after a death, after a loss, you know, there's always that sadness and the pain that goes along with it. And I think he wanted to make sure that everyone knew that he was fine and that they would be fine. And I do believe in, you know, spirits and ghosts. I hate to even say it a ghost because it's too personal for me to be a ghost. I mean, this is my godfather. And this phone call was definitely a confirmation for me. I really believe he spoke to me from the other side.
I think some people are open to seeing things and some people aren't. You know, a lot of people probably get scared about it and they just shut it out because they don't want to deal with it. They don't believe in those other dimensions. I think there's a lot of unforeseen stuff out there that if you care to see it, you will. I was going to college for the first time, and the first college that I went to was in Boston at Emerson College. It was the first time I was ever in school, so of course my parents were like, you have to stay in a dorm. And when I got there, and I'd never been to Boston before, There was this really beautiful old building. Supposedly it was like built in the turn of the century in like 1890s. Supposedly like Eugene O'Neill lived and died in that building. And it was very beautiful. It had those kind of, towers on the corners, and it's huge. It just had this otherworldly sort of vibe to it. And I had come from California, so I wasn't used to such old buildings. I was happy to be there, and I found a lot of the times, like, I would start exploring the place because it was huge. You'd walk down the halls, and it definitely had a vibe there. I kind of had a smell and a vibe. I remember one night, I was just kind of walking around, and I found, as I, went through this weird staircase and another staircase, around the corner, I found this completely closed up old ballroom. There was the ball. It was just like the ballroom in The Shining when he goes and has drinks. And it was so beautiful, but really creepy. And at a certain point, I started getting a little freaked out, thinking, wow, I'm here alone. And actually, it started feeling a little bit creepy. It was like, whoa, like you could just feel that there were ghosts everywhere. You could just sense it. So that's how I made my way out of there. And I remember trying to tell my friends about it, and they're like, what place? And so I tried to find my way back to it, and I could never find my way back. I never found the ballroom again. There was an RA on the floor, this cute guy. He was very like Dutch looking. He had blonde hair, and all the girls thought he was really cute. And one night, one of my roommates, her boyfriend was visiting. So we let them have the room. And I ended up with my other roommate staying in the RA's room. There's 2 beds. It wasn't a strange thing that people stayed in different rooms, It was almost more like, a big party going on all the time. It was our first year at school. And he was like, oh yeah, you guys can stay in my room tonight. So it wasn't a big deal. And I remember it being freezing in there. It was really, really cold. And I remember I was so cold, I slept on my stomach, kind of like, all smushed up like that. His room was definitely had this, it's almost like this perceptive, like, there's this inaudible hum. I don't know, it's really hard to explain. And in the middle of the night, I remember kind of opening up my eyes, and it was really quiet in the room. And over his bed, I saw, it was almost like, as my eyes started to focus, it was like a milky white sort of filtered light. But then as I kept, as your eyes adjust in the dark, as I continued to look at it, it was like a little girl. I mean, she must have been like 10 years old, in a little dress. She had blonde hair, kind of wavy, almost old-fashioned looking. I was in shock and stayed very still. And she was just caressing him as he was sleeping. And she was like rubbing his back over his like butt to his legs. But like very, almost like as if he were an animal or like a cat or a dog or something. Very sweet. And she just felt so lonely and kind of sad. There was a real like kind of sadness and like a kind of a comfort petting my friend. It was so still in that room. And at some point, she saw me looking at her, because I was very still. I was just watching her. And as she did that, I remember we kind of looked at each other. She just stopped, and then she faded away. It's like she didn't realize someone else was in the room, because he usually stays in that room by himself. And, as soon as she realized I was there, she went away. She definitely, when she sensed me, because her face kind of shifted over to mine, we made eye contact, and then it just faded. It was a definite slow fade. She slowly evaporated. And in the morning, I remember waking up, and I said to him, I said, you know, dude, I saw this like little girl here last night. And he started telling us this story about, he's like, every night, like this ghost is in my room. And I was like, dude, like, she was like stroking your backside. And he almost turned red. He almost kind of got a little bit embarrassed. I think he was really kind of relieved that someone else actually was confirming his story. He said it went on all the time. I definitely got the sense that she was really like in love with him, just happy he was there. We started doing research, or we were told that the hotel, it is known as the haunted hotel. There was a lot of deaths in that building. I was going to college for the first time, and when I got there was this really beautiful old building. It just had this otherworldly sort of vibe to it. One night, I ended up with my other roommate staying in the RA's room. And in the middle of the night, over his bed, I saw a little girl. I mean, she must have been like 10 years old, in a little dress. I remember we kind of looked at each other. She just stopped, and then she faded away. We started doing research, or we were told that the hotel, it is known as the haunted hotel. There was a lot of deaths in that building. There had been a flood in the basement where they used to keep horses, and the caretaker of the horses had drowned. I think it was the 6th floor, but someone had hung themselves on one of the pipes. They called it the suicide room. There was the little girl who lived in that room with her parents, and they had all died. The mother and father and little girl, they had died in a fire. And it made sense to me because it just seemed like she was just getting comfort, like she was lost. And so maybe she was staying there, waiting for her parents to come back. The thing that was interesting about her was she looked like she could have been this guy's daughter. They had the exact same coloring, almost like she thought it was her father, or she was looking for that sort of father figure. I mean, I don't look at this energy as evil at all. I think this little girl was just lost and confused and waiting for her parents to come and take care of her. I don't think there's anything evil about her at all. If anything, you just kind of feel sad for her. If there's a traumatic death, if there's a sudden death, and the spirit gets confused, I think sometimes the ghosts or the people, they don't pass over because they don't even know it's happened yet. So they're just trying to find their way. Either they're stuck in that place where they were murdered, or they're trying to find their way back to what they know. I mean, God, you just want to take her and let her move on so she's not stuck there for all eternity.
I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, a suburb called Bloomington, and your typical upper middle class family. My father was an educator. My mother had hair salons. Just your average sort of American family. My first experience that I remember was when I was 12. So I'm laying in bed, and I look over to my bedroom door, which is to my left across the room. And I see in the doorway, there's a woman standing with long brown hair, and then from behind her, a man goes down the stairs. And I can't make sense of this at all. And then, you know, two or 3 days later, I woke up and there was a man over me. And then another time there was a guy standing over my mother. Though I know this is gonna sound really creepy, but he didn't have a head. Most of the time, you don't see ghosts and, you know, head to toe. You see them waist up, shoulders down, kind of pieces of them, if you will. And I knew what I was seeing was not wrong. I wasn't seeing things. It wasn't my eyes playing tricks on me at all. I have no explanation for it, but it does happen. You know, I don't just walk into rooms and see dead people, you know, that's certainly not, I have, but that's not real common. I kind of have to be there for a while, and then I'll either see something or I'll hear them, or something will happen. From there on, for probably a year with these particular ghosts, they were really, I don't want to say violent, but really forward and in my face. They would wake me up in the middle of the night all the time, you know, Kelly, or, you know, tapping, you know, pulling hair. When they wake you up in the middle of the night, you wake up looking right at them. It's not like you're groggy and you're going, ugh, you know. It's almost like before you wake up, they're getting your attention. When I was occupied, they'd be, you know, nudging at me. Like, over here, you know. They would move my clothes or anything. Forks moving across the table. The plates, you know, rattling. It was really, really just their confrontational behavior towards me. And that's how I knew when they were in my room or when they were in the house and when they weren't. And this was horrifying for me. My father took me to go have a psychological test done because, you know, how do you believe someone that's telling you there's people in your room? You know, I would think my kid is losing it, for sure. And I was perfectly normal, and it was frustrating for them because it was really hard on me. I really thought I was, like, losing my mind. And that's kind of a scary, you know, feeling when you're 12. And at that point, I was like, bring it on. I need help, because this is serious. And Michael came over and walked right into the house. I remember him just going to work right away. When he walked into my bedroom, one was laying on the bed, they're sitting on the floor. He said, there are these 6 guys. These guys were angry, and you felt it. They're unhappy in the present. They're unhappy on the other side. They've definitely, you know, moved in and aren't leaving, and were very confrontational with him. He described one guy that I did see, you know, and I didn't tell him what he looked like, so then I absolutely then believed everything he told me. And from what Michael tells me, they were very possessive of me. The worst moment, which still irks me to death, ironically, was when Michael was coming over to the house and we were dealing with the 6 guys, and he looked at me dead in the eye and he said, "Kelly, do not worry, they'll never hurt you." And I was like, okay. And probably 2 days later, I'm sitting up against the bed. No one's in the room. Something smacks me clear across the forehead. You're to smack yourself. You can feel the sting from the smack, and I can just feel it on my forehead. I flipped. I couldn't even wrap my head around it. I still can't. It still freaks me out. And it was almost like as if they heard him say that or something, and they just did that in spite of him. I'm like, okay, so if they smack me across the forehead, like, are they gonna push me down the stairs or, like, I really lived in fear, for sure. He did teach me and told me how to speak to them. He would say, "Kelly, you gotta tell them to get out. This is your house. This is your home. Do not disturb me." And boy, I would walk in there, in my bedroom and say, "Get out of here." And it never worked. I think part of the reason why they were there for so long, I was a real wimp about it. I was very scared. I think I was very weak. And that's what Michael would tell me, and they were very strong. During the experience, Michael would tell me a little bit of backstory on these 6 guys. And he would tell me that these bullies were very angry people that left their bodies violently. Apparently, many, were murdered. One had committed suicide. After Michael explained it to me, I understood it more. But the problem is that I started to feel sorry for them. I felt guilty getting rid of them too. The 6 guys, I can't tell you the day they departed, but I can tell you at the time, I was coming from a much more loving place when they left. They wanted that attention. They probably wanted me to learn about them. They wanted just that spotlight, that attention, like me, 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 me. So I was forced to learn about them and find something out about them that can help me get rid of them. Is it a gift? I don't know, because I guess I've never really had profound things happen from it. Maybe it will be a gift someday, but so far it hasn't, and certainly in the beginning it was a curse. It wasn't pretty at all.
In 1984, Ghostbusters, I did the movie Ghostbusters, and when it came out, it was very popular. And so I would get all these sort of weird requests to do different things. I got asked to come to Greer, Arizona. Greer, Arizona, there's a hotel there that I was told was built on some Indian burial ground. I don't know if that's true or not. But I got asked to come to Greer and to spend a night in this hotel that had a ghost named Zeke. Zeke was a ghost that people reportedly had seen. I think Zeke killed his bride, and he was still haunting, still showing up in this place. And many people had encountered Zeke, and some people had come there to spend the night and left in the middle of the night because he sort of appeared. Yeah, sure, right, okay, whatever. I didn't really take a whole lot of it very serious. And at first I said no, but then my wife thought it would be fun. And my youngest son at the time, my second son, he thought it would be fun. So we decided to spend the night in this hotel. And the next morning, we were going to tell our experiences if we had some supernatural experience. So, but it'll be a fun thing to do. We got there just before sundown. So we had nice dinner and all that, and then we had a room, and everything was pretty normal. We retired for the evening and went to sleep. And then about 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up, and I'm not sure what woke me up. I woke up and I noticed over my son's bed was this intense light. The room was dark, but it was like this ball of light that was just sort of kind of hovering over my son's bed. It was sort of hanging there. First, I questioned myself, am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? Because it really seems kind of, this light is sort of over my son. And so then after I kind of made sure that I was really awake. And I woke my wife up and I said, don't panic, but look over at Rocky's bed and tell me if you see what I think I'm seeing. And then she went, oh my God, it's over something here.
It's okay.
Once it sort of went down to the foot of the bed and then sort of moved toward the door, it just went the opposite. It was just this intense black mass that just felt like it was someone for sure standing at the door, inside the room. It was like a person there, and you could see because the light around the door that came from the outside, when it moved, it would block the light. My son, who kind of heard my wife sort of panicking, and he kind of woke up.
What's that?
And he looked over and he said, Daddy, somebody's in the room, somebody's in the room. And I was certain that when I turned the light on, that we would see this person, this entity or whatever. Just hold on, and now! And there was nobody there. We just sort of panicked and wanted to get out of the room. We thought we could go someplace where there were other people and we'd be safe. Unfortunately, we didn't find other people and we didn't feel that way. And then my son sort of went over to the door of the room that this person supposedly had killed his bride. The door was unlocked, and he opened the door, and there was nobody there. And then the door, we could hear it opening more. And then we looked over, and then we got this, it was like a chill, it was like a wind that just sort of swept over us. And then we panicked. We just ran and we ran. And it ran what seemed like a long time, but we realized we had no clue where we were going. And I have no idea where Greer is on the map, and there was no place to run. So we had no choice but to go back to the room. And we sat up all night waiting to tell somebody about this. So the next morning, I was just just dying to tell what had happened. And then the other people there, they started talking, only to find that everybody there had had some experience very similar. So that was kind of interesting because it was not just me, but it was my wife and my son along as well. And we took off the next morning, and that's the last time I've been to Greer, Arizona.
As we were around the fire telling ghost stories, the story was kind of horrific that your parent or caretaker could be so cruel. It's just a little too much to even think of.
Whatever this was, it was playing with me. Was he here? Was he not here? They got my attention.
I saw this man lying flat on the floor.
Don't drink the water.
She said, I didn't tell any man to come here. I get a phone call, and there's nobody there. I've never told anyone else because I'm afraid they'll think I'm cuckoo or something, but it's absolutely true.
It was just the same tones over and over again. Da 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 da. When are they gonna stop?
When I was growing up, ghosts were just something that were out of reach. Now in my life, I don't want to have a ghost experience. I put out this energy like, you ain't coming in. And I guess that strategy or that capability was something that began to get exercised when I left Utah that day. We were busy doing the Brady Bunch, and at that time had developed some very close friendships with my castmates. In fact, the home that we were at was the grandparents of Michael Lookinland, played Bobby. His family was vacationing for a couple of days visiting their grandparents, and I was along for the ride on this trip. It was 1970 in the midst of the wilds of Utah. The town was Spring City, Utah, a very remote, small town. Creepy, because it was like, you know, the middle of nowhere. On the first night we were there, we were all by the fire. This is Mike's family. Sister around, at the time, I believe 10. Mike was around 9. His parents and his grandparents. And as we were around the fire, telling ghost stories in this particular case, talking about the house and the history of the house.
This house
Was the home of some regional judge. 120 years earlier. And the judge would travel the circuit, going to courts. You know, the judge apparently loved his first wife, who died and lived that love through his daughter. The story was kind of horrific because apparently his second wife was jealous of his daughter. The judge is away. She locks her in the upstairs bedroom. The excuse being that maybe she had some communicable disease. And, well, more than neglects her. She starved her to death. and the daughter dies this horrible, death upstairs, that your parent or caretaker could be so cruel as to, let you die, a slow, agonizing death like that. It's just a little too much to even think of. It did come up that the house is said to be haunted. I was a little creeped out by the concept of ghosts. The seed was set with that expression. We were sent to bed, and Mike was right under the window. And I'm on a bed opposite him on the other wall, obviously room between us. And as I'm facing the wall, cuddled up and going to sleep, I hear footsteps. Oh my God, there's the ghost that we heard about. All the hairs in the back of my head start standing up, and that goosebump feeling. And then I hear them walk by me. I didn't want to be frightened, but I was. I blurted out to Mike, "Mike, did you hear that?" Hoping he said no. Yeah. When he said yes, I think all the hairs on my body stood up. I bounded out of bed. And ran right into his dad's chest, who was laughing his ass off because he was outside making these sounds. Michael's dad was all about the practical joke. What I had heard wasn't any ghost. Mike was behind me, but he wasn't anywhere near as frightened as I was. He was sort of laughing at me, which isn't really comfortable when I'm supposed to be sort of like in our little group, the little leader. Nonetheless, the fright had taken place. The house was now safe. The whole ghost thing it was spent. I just go back to sleep. And then very early in the morning, I feel this sort of faint breath. I see these two dogs. They were like hunting dogs. There wasn't any dogs that I remembered in this house. None of that is necessarily computed in this moment. I look up, and here's this girl, just a silhouette, with a nightgown, and she had two little pigtails. I thought it was Teresa, Mike's sister. She's about 10 years old at the time. She was in the house. I was asleep at that moment, and she is calling the dogs. I just go back to sleep. And the logic was, well, there's a girl in the doorway, and there's a girl that age that is in this house. But somehow, because she was there, that made the dogs okay. It wasn't something to question. I wake up, and we're all having breakfast in the morning. I ask, hey, where are those dogs? And everybody looks at me like I'm freaking out of my mind. We don't have any dogs here. I wake up, and we're all having breakfast in the morning. I ask, hey, where are those dogs? And everybody looks at me like I'm freaking out of my mind. We don't have any dogs here. And I said, I thought we didn't, but last night, Teresa there was dogs in my room, and she was calling them out. Then I look at her, and, she's in sweats and thermals. She also doesn't have pigtails. nothing similar to what I saw. I'm already now flushed with the reality that I saw something that couldn't have been, and now could only be explained as ghostly apparitions.
Follow me.
Then the parents take me out to the living room. They say, what kind of dogs? And I say they were like hunting dogs, you know, like German short-hair pointer type dogs. And they point to the fireplace. Hunting dogs.
Those the dogs you saw last night?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those dogs. That's what I saw. It was just creepy. You ever have one of those moments when you just, you know, like you swerved and you missed something, and then like that 10 seconds later, you have this rush of adrenaline and blood and heart pump, 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 pump. That's what happened. And then Mike's grandfather says the second wife was said to have also killed the judge's two prized and loved hunting dogs.
No!
We've established that this woman was evil, and that she could starve a child the way that she did. The woman brought upon this house some spirits that weren't ready to leave. It could be that the dogs were involved in the afterlife, protecting the girl spirit. That was what they did in life. Maybe the reason I'm visited is because I'm the stranger. This is, you know, Michael's grandparents' home. He has been there numerous times. They probably were all okay. I'm the one that needs to get checked out. And was. I couldn't even really go back upstairs to pack my bag without Mike being with me or somebody being with me. It was such a creepy feeling. I wouldn't even to this day want to challenge myself by being in that environment again. I've never been that frightened ever again.
I think that the paranormal is something that is very prevalent in our society. Whether you're Christian or not, you certainly believe in angels, and you believe in the devil, you believe in the battle between good and evil. And why can't that manifest on Earth, right here with us? Absolutely, I think about it all the time. At this point in my life, I had just started modeling. I had just made my first little bit of money. I had a boyfriend who said, why not invest in a house? So we started looking on Long Island at homes, and I came upon this really big old house on a bluff in Long Island. Before I even arrived at the survey line of the land, I knew that this was the house that I wanted. I did feel like I was being called to the house. I didn't know why. It was stupendous, a beautiful view of the ocean, and it was just a really amazing looking house. It had fireplaces, which I like. It was a family-owned house. It had come down from generation to generation in a family. It was a really big investment. It was very exciting. It was going to be a long-term commitment, a long-term investment. I knew that this was the house that I wanted. The first weekend I was in the house, I was upstairs, and I heard my boyfriend downstairs. And I came downstairs, and he was standing in the living room wearing a black coat and this funny little kind of aviator's hat that had been hanging on the fireplace. I don't know, maybe it was from a previous owner or whatnot, but it was hanging on the fireplace. And I thought that my boyfriend had put it on to, you know, play around with me. So I came down the stairs, I'm like, what are you doing? And he ran behind the fireplace. So I chased him. And he ducked behind the other side. And I chased him again. I was literally laughing and talking with him with his hat on. And then my boyfriend came in the front door. He looked at me kind of strange and said, what do you want?
I heard you calling.
I said, oh, I wasn't calling to you. I thought you were here in the living room.
I was outside this whole time.
I was chasing you around the fireplace. I couldn't have been talking any louder than I'm talking now.
I was just chasing you around.
And he said, no, I heard you yell for me, and that's why I came. Whatever this was, whether I was seeing something or it was an actual spirit in the house, it was playing with me. But it was a curious thing because I thought, am I losing it? Am I going crazy here? Was he here? Was he not here? And how did he hear me all the way on the other side of the property? It got my attention, for sure. The next experience was, I was in my bedroom, and my boyfriend was behind me, and he was just rubbing some cream on my shoulders. We both kind of stopped at the same time. I thought I saw the cat come around the corner, stretch out, and then like melt. And he said, isn't that funny? I know that we didn't bring the cats, but even without them, it feels like they're here. I said, did you see that too? He said, what did you see? I said, I thought I saw the cat like melt. He said, I saw the same thing. The only reason that I really thought I saw it was because he saw it too. That gave a little bit more strength to the fact that maybe there was something. Well, it was a really, really long time after that I had a girlfriend come stay at my house. We had a lovely evening together. We cooked, we sat around the fireplace, we played cards. And it was rather late in the evening when we all went to bed. We went to bed about 1:30 or so. The next morning when I woke up, they were gone. It was rather late in the evening when we all went to bed. We went to bed about 1:30 or so. The next morning when I woke up, they were gone. I mean, the bed was stripped and they were gone. I got a phone call from my girlfriend and she said, my husband couldn't stay in the house. I said, well, why not? She said, well, he woke up in the middle of the night. And said that I was out of bed and messing around in my makeup kit and moving mascara around or whatever, and he said, come back to bed. And come back to bed. He rolled over and I was in bed. And he looked back to my makeup kit. Somebody else was there. It wasn't me. And he got very upset and he woke me up.
Hey, baby, come on. We gotta go. Come on, wake up.
And he put me in the car, and as we were driving away, I went to zip up my makeup bag, and I had to reach in to move some of my makeup around, and there was all this stuff all over my hands, and I realized that my mascara had leaked out, and that's what made me leave the house. And she said, what do you mean? He goes, well, you were standing there and you were making a motion like this in your makeup bag. It was there, and then I rolled over, and I thought it was you, and then I rolled over, and you were there, and She thought he was kind of crazy, but I kind of understood what he was talking about. It's scary when that happens, because your brain goes into overdrive. You try to rationalize it. So, I mean, I went and did a little research on, you know, paranormal things, and my girlfriend was very friendly with the Warrens, and she suggested that I have them come to the house. Mrs. Warren, she told us some things about the house that there was no way she could have known. The layout of the land, how the house had been, the nearby cemeteries. It was pretty intense. It was pretty amazing. She was saying that, yes, there was something.
But it's friendly. It wants somebody to take care of this house.
It had been one of the previous owners of the house. And they were supposedly buried in a close by, a nearby cemetery. And that it was a big family that lived in this house, and it was a very big, loving family. This house had its own guardian angel. My opinion is that if a spirit comes to you in a menacing way, then it doesn't want you there. If it comes in a form that is benevolent and familiar, in a form that you love, then I can't imagine that it's telling you it doesn't want you there. Maybe it's trying to communicate with you in some way. Whatever I had seen had come in a familiar form. It came in a friendly way. It came as something I loved. It came in the form of my boyfriend. It came in the form of my cat. So these are benevolent. It was welcoming and making me feel good about being there. And in fact, I took very good care of that house. Absolutely, it was meant to be that I was there. I wanted to be there, and it wanted me there.
Before I tell the story, I want to preface it by saying I was the worst skeptic, a real skeptic. I didn't believe anything. I thought everything that did happen was like a coincidence. But this story, it goes beyond a coincidence. It was 1968. At that time, I hadn't worked for a few months, quite a few months, and I was getting a little desperate. I was a little worried about my career and everything. We were living in a house, and it was here in LA, and it had 2 floors. So the kitchen was on the first floor, obviously, and my wife was upstairs in the bedroom on the 2nd floor. I was playing tennis, and I got through playing tennis, and I walked about 3 blocks to my house. And I went in the back door. And when you went in the back door, you came into the kitchen. And when I came into the kitchen, I saw this man lying flat on the floor. And he was in work clothes. And he had the plumbing thing, the plunger. And then all of a sudden, he got up. And I could see him with the white beard. The beard was very prominent. I think it's because his hair was sort of blackish. I said, well, what are you doing? What's the matter? He said, oh, nothing serious. But don't drink the water for a while. I said, what?
Don't drink the water.
I said, why?
Is there something wrong with the water?
He said, no, no, just stay away for a while.
Okay.
Well, all right. So I left the kitchen. I went upstairs to the bedroom where my wife was. I said, the plumber down there says not to drink the water. She said, what plumber?
Who's downstairs?
I said, the man that's down there in the kitchen fixing the sink. She said, I didn't tell any man to come here. I said, what do you, come on down, I'll show you. So she comes down with me. And there's nobody in the kitchen. It's completely empty. The kitchen sink is all fixed and everything. So now we look in the living room and the dining room and the porch. And there's nobody there. We look out in the backyard and no one is there. I said, Pat, I swear to you there was a man here fixing the kitchen sink. And she said, really? I said, yes.
He was laying right there.
I said, well, he says not to drink the water.
He said, don't drink the water.
What do you mean? What are you talking about?
Repeatedly, he said.
I said, I'm telling you what he said very definitely. Don't drink the water. I don't think she thought it was the ghost right away. She thought maybe there was somebody that was there without us calling. But she thought about it. It took a few days, and then she began to think, oh my gosh, that might have been a ghost. See, my wife is very gullible, and she believes in psychics and all that, and I don't. Me, I'm a real skeptic, so I figured I'd just leave it alone. Then I get a long-distance call because my wife's mother was back in New York. My wife's mother claims she's a psychic, and she used to have seances at my living room. As a matter of fact, I used to go outside in the backyard, and while they were having the seances, I used to go, ooh, ooh. They didn't know it was me. They used to think it was coming from underneath the table or something. So my mother-in-law calls up, and she said, is everything going all right? And I said, yes, everything's fine. And she said, because I had a dream that you shouldn't drink the water. I said, what? She said, you don't drink the water. I said, oh, come on, Pat put you up to this. That's my wife's name, Pat. She said, no, don't drink the water, goodbye. And I went up to Pat, I said, did you tell her to say that? And Pat said, no. She was very innocent looking too. So it was very strange that both people told me not to drink the water. The next day, I get a phone call from my agent. And I said, hi, bud. You got a job? He said, yep. You're going to leave in 2 weeks. You got a big show. It's a big hit on Broadway. It was written by Woody Allen. I said, gee, that's great. What show did Woody Allen write? And he said, the show is called Don't Drink the Water.
What?
I couldn't believe my ears. Woody Allen was very famous at the time, and I wasn't used to not working, so I was very happy to get the job. A little scared, but happy. I've never really shared this story with anyone except my wife and my 3 sons. I've never told anyone else because I'm afraid they'll think I'm making it up or I'm cuckoo or something, but it's absolutely true. I've never really shared this story with anyone except my wife and my 3 sons. I've never told anyone else because I'm afraid they'll think I'm making it up or I'm cuckoo or something, but it's absolutely true. 2 weeks later, I left to do this play. It was in Florida, at the Coconut Grove Theater in Florida. When I tell you this, you're gonna say, this is so scary. When I tell it, I get scared. We rehearsed in the play for a couple of weeks. I was very happy. I had a good part. The cast was very nice. We all became very friendly. On opening night, the show went very well. And then after the 3rd act, we went out for the curtain call. You can only see about the first 3 rows when you're taking a curtain call. The rest of it is all darkness. And as I bowed down, I looked over to my right. And there in the 3rd row on the aisle was the plumber, the man with the beard. He was sitting there staring at me. He was not wearing overalls, he had a suit on. And then the curtain came down, so I thought maybe I was seeing things. But then when the curtain went up again, I looked over there, and there he was. He's staring at me. And I knew it was the same man with the beard. I couldn't have been wrong. My knees were shaking. They say your knees shake, they really do when something like that happens. Now, some people think I should have gone out the front and seen if he came out of the theater. But I didn't do that. I was almost too shocked to even move. I never saw him again. Never saw that face again. Only that first night at the curtain calls. And I looked every night. I looked at the audience real sharply, and I never saw it again.
Don't drink the water.
I think that some power bigger than me knew that I was such a skeptic that I wouldn't believe it. They had something happen to me that made me a believer. It's a true story, and I'm a believer now. And ever since then, my career has changed. I've been very lucky. I never stopped working again. Maybe they figure, well, now he's accepting me, so we'll see to it that he works. It's good to know that there's something out there that maybe protects us, you know? Something that's more powerful than us that takes over and keeps us out of trouble. If you look at it that way, you do feel more comfortable, I think. Something is taking care of us.
I grew up in a house where ghosts do not exist. There is no life after death. No one's coming back from the grave. And I think that was just their way of protecting us from being really, really scared all the time, because I lived in this house that was like 5 acres of land, but just at the end of a dead-end dirt road. So no, there were no ghosts that I know of in my house. So it was about 10 years ago. I was an unemployed actress, and I was crashing at my friend's house, and they lived on this big piece of property. And on this property, there was an enormous driveway that would drive all the way up to these houses. And on the property were 2 houses side by side. And my friends, Peter and Kathy, were renting the house on the left, and the woman that owned both the houses lived in the house on the right. They said I could crash in the maid's quarters. And I thought, this is heaven. I can live in a big house with my best friends. And I loved their children. They had a son named Keaton, and they had a daughter named Callie. She was about 2 months at the time. It was a wonderful place to be. It was like a month in, I started to feel stressed by my roommates, only because they would be loud at night. I thought someone was up making dinner at 12 o'clock at night. They're gonna be up in the kitchen, and it was just unfortunate that my room was right off of the kitchen. And I would hear, in my room, I would hear sounds in the kitchen all the time. It felt like someone was cooking a feast. They had children, so I always kind of blamed it on the kids, and understood that, well, you're living with people, and you feel like you don't want to say anything. And I never really wanted to, until it started getting really loud. There were some nights where I would hear whistling. I always assumed it was just one of my friends in the kitchen with one of the children, because it wasn't a loud, annoying whistle. It was just the same tones over and over again. It sounded da 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 da. Over. That was all it was. It was enough that I could lie in bed long enough and think, when are they gonna stop? When are they just gonna get out of the kitchen so I can sleep? I would hear it for months and months, and it never changed. The song never changed. Finally, one night, the minute I heard the whistling, I jumped out of my bed. I went down the long hallway, and I was ready to say, stop it, just stop the whistling. And I went into the kitchen, and it was empty. It was obvious that nobody was in there, and it was obvious that no one had been in there. It wasn't like a light just went off or a pot was still warm. And I went and found them, and they were completely in their master bedroom, as far away as possible, watching TV. One baby was asleep, Keaton was awake, the older son was awake, and I was, at that moment, I felt like, okay, you guys, who was in the kitchen? Like, this is crazy. I had been hearing somebody for months. They thought I'd lost my mind. They were all like, we weren't in there, and they obviously hadn't moved from the bed. So I tried to pull myself together, and I just remember the long walk back to my room in terror. Just, I have to go through that kitchen. What is going on? What am I hearing? But that was really the first night I think I knew in my gut that there is something else making these sounds. So I tried to pull myself together, and I just remember the long walk back to my room in terror. Just, I have to go through that kitchen. What is going on? What am I hearing? But that was really the first night I think I knew in my gut that there is something else making these sounds. That night, I was lying in my bed, and it was so quiet. And I was lying there, and I heard a soft but clear whisper of my name. Marissa, Marissa. And my first instinct was that it's someone in the kitchen who needs me. And I got up and thought, well, I'm gonna go to the kitchen. But I was gonna go and scare them because of all the things I'd been telling them. I'm gonna scare them. And I got down as slow as I could, and I was just walking down as quiet as I could, and then I jumped out. I saw this thing turn at the same moment as me and jump as well, and it was this woman with long, stringy gray hair, and like her eyes were piercing at me. And her face was like sunken in. She looked like she was sick, and she was really pale, and she was in this like shadowy gray, like I couldn't say what exactly. It seemed like she was just this presence, and her hair it's her hair that I remember the most. And I was so terrified at that moment because I knew that moment I had seen something that I never believed in. I turned around as fast as I possibly could, and I just ran into my room and hid under my blankets. I was too scared to go to Peter and Kathy. I was too scared to go to the other side of the house because I didn't want to go through the kitchen ever again at nighttime. And I just thought for sure this person was going to come into my room and kill me. I didn't sleep all night. I was horrified. And the next morning, I told Peter and Kathy the story, and no one really believed me at that moment, and everyone was just kind of making fun of me. But that day, Kathy picked up photos of all of us. And in the photos that we got back, all the photos of Callie had big swooshes through them. It's like if someone took an eraser and just kind of washed through it. And I, of course, was the first one to go, oh my gosh, there's something going on here. This ghost that I saw, this woman that I saw in the kitchen was tied to Callie. I just, at that moment, knew it because we always thought there was something really special about Callie. She'd always be staring off, always staring off. She'd always be looking around and smiling at things, and we'd be like, oh, Callie's looking at angels, because she'd always just have this like joy, but not at me, not at us. It was that she had this joy at something that was right off of us. We never really knew what she was looking at. Keaton's pictures were fine, my photos were fine, Peter's pictures were fine, Kathy's pictures were fine, but it had these swooshes through Callie. That's when Kathy was completely on board. That's when Kathy said, oh yeah, there's something in this house. We convinced Peter to go over and talk to Helen, our landlord, and ask, who used to live in the house? What's the story with the house? Helen told us that she built the house next door for her son and his new wife, and that they moved in when they had a child. They had a little baby girl, and they all three moved into the house. And a few months after they moved in, she told us that her daughter-in-law's mother was sick, and she was dying of cancer, but she wanted to be as close as she could be to her granddaughter. So she lived there, I think it was about 6 months, she said, before she died in that house. And after that, her son and her daughter and the granddaughter moved out because they didn't want to live there anymore. And I was like, oh my God, she's at the house, Helen. She's there. I hear her in the kitchen at all hours. And Helen said she took care of my granddaughter. She held my granddaughter at night. She would always take the night shifts. And that was like her time with the baby. She hummed to her granddaughter to put her to sleep. The hours of humming and the amount of whistling that I heard was as if she never put that baby down. She probably held her until she died. I think my name was whispered because I was living in her room. I think that she wanted me out of her room. I didn't feel confident and safe that I wanted to stay in that house. I left exactly 1 week later because Donna wasn't leaving, so I was gonna have to. It's like I now don't think people are crazy when they tell ghost stories. I have that same feel. When I hear stories of other people, it's because of Donna, it's because of her. I 100% believe in something beyond us because she made herself known to me.